When news quietly broke that Prince William had brought in a senior crisis management expert with deep roots in corporate reputation defence, the initial reaction from much of the British media was almost relieved. Not shocked, not alarmed, relieved. As if this were the most sensible thing a future king could do in a moment like this. And on the surface, that reaction made perfect sense. After all, the British monarchy has not been enjoying what anyone would describe as a stable period. The past few years haven't unfolded as isolated controversies that rise and fall neatly. Instead, they've piled up, one after another, overlapping and compounding, creating a constant background noise of reputational stress. Just as one issue begins to fade, another surges forward, ensuring the institution never quite regains its footing. Prince Andrew remains a lingering disaster zone, a problem so radioactive that it cannot be ignored, but also cannot be solved. King Charles has faced persistent concerns around his health, prompting uncomfortable conversations about succession far earlier than the palace would have preferred. Catherine, Princess of Wales, found herself at the centre of a media storm unlike anything the modern royal family has experienced. Accusations, speculation, prolonged absence, and then a surreal controversy involving altered imagery that only deepened public confusion rather than calming it. Layered on top of all of this has been the relentless tabloid obsession with the Waleses' marriage. Every public interaction is dissected, every facial expression analysed, every absence interpreted. The press treats the personal lives of royals less like human relationships and more like serialised drama, and the public is invited to participate in the speculation. In that environment, the idea that Prince William would hire a crisis management professional barely registered as news. If anything, it felt overdue. A modern royal acknowledging that optics matter. A future monarch preparing himself by surrounding his office with people who understand how reputations survive in the digital age. To many commentators, it looked like maturity. Some outlets even suggested the move was about managing marriage rumours or smoothing public perception around awkward headlines. As if William had simply decided to outsource the emotional labour of being watched constantly. It was framed as pragmatic, even mundane. Nothing to see here. And then the latest batch of documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein entered the public conversation. Suddenly, that neat, comfortable explanation began to look incomplete. Before going any further, it's important to be very clear about what this conversation is and is not. This is not an attempt to retry allegations in the court of public opinion. This is not an effort to sensationalize trauma or reduce serious accusations into entertainment. The crimes associated with Epstein's network involved real victims and real harm. Those facts demand seriousness, restraint, and respect. Criminal investigations belong to law enforcement, not YouTube commentary or social media speculation. And it is a matter of public record that British police have repeatedly declined to pursue further investigation into Prince Andrew, despite calls to do so. That decision, controversial as it may be, is documented history. What is fair to examine, however, is how powerful institutions respond when allegations resurface. Because they always do. Scandals of this magnitude do not fade quietly. They retreat temporarily, then return, often with more documentation, more testimony, and more public anger. The most recent release of Epstein-related records once again dragged Prince Andrew's name back into headlines around the world. Emails, witness statements and flight records reignited public memory of the accusations made by Virginia Giuffre, who alleged sexual contact while she was trafficked as a minor allegations Andrew has consistently denied. For many people, the defining moment in this saga remains Andrew's infamous televised interview, an appearance that was widely described as catastrophic. An attempt to explain away accusations that instead hardened public skepticism. The interview didn't just fail to clear his name, it became shorthand for institutional arrogance and tone deafness. That single broadcast arguably inflicted more damage on the monarchy's credibility than decades of political criticism ever managed to do. Because it wasn't just about Andrew. It was about how the institution responded or failed to. Every time Epstein-related material resurfaces, the palace confronts the same dilemma all over again. Not whether Andrew's reputation can be salvaged, it cannot. That ship sailed years ago. The real issue is institutional credibility. Because Andrew's disgrace does not exist in isolation. It bleeds outward. It feeds the perception that wealth and status create insulation. That accountability operates differently at the top. That certain people inhabit a separate moral and legal ecosystem. And in an era of heightened skepticism toward elites, that perception is poison. For a monarchy already grappling with relevance in the 21st century, this is not a minor branding problem. It's existential. This is where Prince William's role becomes critical. For years, William has been carefully positioned as the counterweight to past mistakes. The stable one, the responsible one, the modernizer. Profiles emphasize his seriousness, his work ethic, his sense of duty. He is consistently framed as the future king who understands public expectations and has learned from the failures of previous generations. But here is the uncomfortable truth the palace rarely articulates openly. You cannot fully separate the heir from the institution he represents. No matter how carefully his image is curated, William remains part of the same system that shielded Andrew for years. The same system that ultimately paid a multi-million-pound settlement to resolve a civil case without any admission of wrongdoing. A resolution that closed a legal chapter while leaving moral questions wide open. Every time Andrew's name returns to the news cycle, the same quiet questions resurface alongside it. Who knew what and when? Who was protected? Who made decisions behind closed doors? And why was silence repeatedly chosen over transparency? From that perspective, hiring a top-tier crisis manager doesn't look like preparation for tabloid drama. It looks like something else entirely. It looks like anticipation. Because the palace understands a hard reality. This story is not over. Epstein may be dead, but the evidence trail he left behind continues to surface. Survivors continue to speak. Journalists continue to investigate. Archives continue to be opened. And public tolerance for perceived impunity has never been thinner. In this climate, Prince William cannot afford to appear reactive. He cannot look caught off guard. He cannot look like a future king scrambling to respond to revelations that everyone else saw coming. His role now requires foresight, not damage control after the fact. This raises an important question. What does crisis management actually mean in this context? Contrary to popular belief, crisis managers do not erase facts. They do not make documents disappear. They do not rewrite history. What they do is shape response. They determine timing, language, tone, and silence. They decide who speaks, when they speak, and how much is said or left unsaid. They identify pressure points before pressure arrives. They build scenarios. They plan for worst-case outcomes. Their specialty is containment. And containment is exactly what the monarchy needs. Because the institution understands something very clearly. Its survival does not depend on Prince Andrew. He is already, in many ways, expendable. His public role has been stripped away, his visibility curtailed, his usefulness exhausted. What the monarchy cannot afford is for Andrew's legacy to contaminate its future. William must remain, if not pristine, then at least comparatively untainted. He must represent continuity without corruption, stability without denial. Every renewed discussion of Epstein matters not because it introduces accusations against William himself, but because it forces the institution to confront its own instincts. Instincts toward denial, toward deflection, toward delay. The longer the palace clings to narratives that paint Andrew as merely unlucky or unfairly targeted, the more disconnected it appears from public reality. And public reality has shifted dramatically. People no longer accept honorifics as evidence. Titles no longer confer trust. Status no longer equals credibility. And institutions that close ranks under scrutiny are viewed with deep suspicion. Seen through that lens, early tabloid claims that the crisis hire was about managing marriage rumours begin to feel like misdirection. A softer explanation offered to avoid discussing a much harder truth. Because the real crisis facing Prince William isn't gossip. It isn't body language analysis. It isn't even media obsession with his personal life. It is the unresolved moral weight at the centre of the institution he will inherit. An institution that speaks endlessly about service while relying on settlements and silence when accountability becomes uncomfortable. An institution that insists it has moved forward while never fully reckoning with how it handled one of the most serious scandals in modern royal history. This is why communications alone are no longer enough. The monarchy now requires strategic defence, planning for document releases, preparing for renewed outrage, building firewalls between past failures and future leadership. And whether he wants that role or not, Prince William is that firewall. So no, the surprising part of this story is not that he hired a crisis manager. The surprising part is that anyone believed it was about something trivial. Because when allegations of this magnitude continue to resurface, when investigations stall, when victims still wait for justice, and when institutions prioritize self-preservation over transparency, public patience runs out. The monarchy knows this. William knows this. And that is why crisis containment, not fairy tale narratives, is now part of the job description for Britain's future king. Whether it succeeds is another question entirely.